I woke up on a Saturday morning around 11 in the morning. It was the kind of day where you're supposed to relax and just enjoy doing nothing at all. But that morning, something felt different. There was this heaviness in the air that I couldn't quite explain. My name is Samuel. I'm 28 years old and I work in IT for a company in London. But here's the thing about me that most people don't know. I'm obsessed with the paranormal. I've been fascinated by it since I was a kid. Some people collect stamps or coins. I hunt for ghosts. So when I saw the advertisement on social media for this beautiful two-story wooden house built in the 1970s with an incredibly cheap rent, I didn't hesitate. The reason it was so cheap was because of the history, and that history is exactly why I wanted it. The real estate agent warned me when I came to see the property. She told me that no one had lived there for more than a few nights and years. She said the house had been empty for a long time before me, but she wouldn't give me the full story. She just kept saying I should rent somewhere else. I pushed her for answers and she finally broke down and told me everything. A woman named Catherine lived here with her daughter sometime in the 1990s. Her husband worked in the military. One night, Catherine got a call saying her husband had been killed in service. She completely fell apart. The grief consumed her. She started wandering through the house like a ghost herself. She couldn't take care of her daughter anymore. One day, the little girl went down to the basement to play. That's when Catherine did it. She hanged herself from the cellar while her daughter was down there. The child was too small to understand what was happening. She just sat under her mother's hanging body and watched her through the entire night. 4 days later, the mailman smelled something awful coming from the house. He called the police. When they got here, they found Catherine's body completely decomposed, and beneath her, they found the little girl who had starved to death, waiting for her mother to come back down. When the agent finished telling me the story, I should have walked away. Most people would have. But for me, this was perfect. This was exactly the kind of place I needed to investigate. So I signed the lease that day. Before I moved in, I did my research. I tried to find any records of who had lived here after Catherine and her daughter. There was nothing. No names. No rental agreements. Nothing that suggested anyone had successfully stayed long-term. People online said no one could last more than a single night in this house. I was determined to be different. I was convinced that if there was any supernatural activity here, I would be the one to document it properly. I would be the first person to prove ghosts were real. I moved in on a Tuesday. The house was empty when I arrived except for the furniture the landlord had left behind. The first few nights were fine. There was nothing strange. I filmed some content for TikTok walking around showing people the layout. Living room, kitchen, the stairs going up to the bedroom, the long corridor at the end of the living room that led down to the basement. I mentioned the history in a few videos and people started getting interested. Comments poured in. People begged me to go to the basement at night. The landlord had explicitly told me not to go down there after dark, but I was planning to anyway. It was Friday evening when I first saw it. I came home from work around 6 in the evening, and I immediately noticed something was wrong. There on the wall near the living room were handprints, small handprints, a child's handprints. They were made in what looked like wet paint or chalk or something similar. The prints were fresh. I could tell because the edges weren't smudged. Someone or something had made these prints recently. I lived alone. I had no neighbors with small children nearby. My doors were all locked and I hadn't given anyone a key. I checked every window, all locked, no signs of forced entry anywhere. But the handprints were undeniably there. I filmed them for my TikTok. The comments went crazy. People were saying the house was definitely haunted. I felt this rush of excitement mixed with something else. Something I didn't want to admit was fear. That night I started noticing a smell. It was faint at first, just a hint of something rotten, something dead. It got stronger as the evening progressed. It was worse in certain areas of the house, The basement door smelled the worst. I opened it and looked down the dark stairs, but I didn't go down. The smell was coming from down there, and it made my stomach turn. I tried to sleep that night, but I couldn't. I kept thinking about the handprints, about that smell. At around 2 in the morning, I heard something that made my blood run cold. Footsteps. They were coming from downstairs. Heavy footsteps, like someone was running. But the steps sounded wrong somehow. They were irregular and chaotic, like a child running around in a panic. I got out of bed and went downstairs to check. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. But when I reached the living room, there was nothing. No one was there. All the doors were still locked. All the windows closed. The footsteps had stopped completely. I went back to bed, but I didn't sleep. I just lay there listening to the darkness. The next morning, the handprints were gone. They had completely vanished from the wall. It was like they had never existed at all. But I had filmed them. I had proof. I uploaded the video and people started speculating in the comments. Some said it was obviously faked. Others said it was the most terrifying thing they had ever seen. A few people said I needed to leave the house immediately. But I wasn't going to leave. I was just getting started. Over the next few days, I started experiencing more things. My things would go missing and then show up in different places. I would leave my lamp in one corner of the living room and wake up to find it in a completely different room. My coffee maker moved from the kitchen to the bedroom. My phone charger ended up in the basement stairwell, even though I had specifically kept it upstairs. I started documenting everything. Every incident went into a spreadsheet. Every strange occurrence was filmed and posted to TikTok. My followers grew exponentially. People from all over the world were watching my content. They were invested in what was happening to me. Some were encouraging me to stay and investigate more. Others were warning me that I was in danger. I was in the living room on Wednesday evening when I noticed something else. A second set of handprints had appeared on the wall. These were different from the first set. They were bigger, less childlike. The handprints of an adult woman, and they had clearly been made in blood. I could see the rust-colored stains on the white paint. My hands were shaking when I filmed this. This was the second warning sign. The first had been subtle, a child's handprints that could have been explained away somehow. But this was undeniable. This was a clear escalation. Whoever or whatever was in this house was making their presence known in increasingly obvious ways. That night I didn't sleep at all. I sat in my living room with all the lights on and I watched the darkness outside the windows. I waited to see if something would happen. Nothing did, but I could hear sounds throughout the night, creaking floorboards, scratching from inside the walls, the sound of something being dragged across the floor above me. By Thursday, I was exhausted and on edge, but I was also more excited than I had ever been. This was real. This was actually happening. I was documenting genuine paranormal activity. I decided that I needed to capture more evidence. I needed footage. I decided to set up my camera in the living room and film myself sleeping there overnight. I would catch whatever was happening on camera while I was in the room. I set up my phone on a tripod facing the couch where I was planning to sleep. I made sure the battery was fully charged. I tested the frame to make sure my entire body would be visible. Then I hit record. I told myself I would finally have undeniable proof of what was happening. I fell asleep around midnight. My exhaustion finally caught up with me and I was out within minutes. But I didn't sleep well. My dreams were filled with images of a woman hanging from a rope, a small child sitting beneath her, the smell of decay. All of it felt so vivid and real that I kept jolting awake. At around 3 in the morning, I heard a door slam. It was a loud, violent sound that echoed through the entire house. I sat up on the couch immediately. My heart was racing. I checked all the doors. Every single one was locked, just like they had been when I went to bed. but I could have sworn I heard one of them close with tremendous force. I didn't go back to sleep after that. I just sat there on the couch and waited for the sun to come up. When dawn finally arrived, I felt this overwhelming sense of relief. I was exhausted and terrified, but I was alive. Whatever was in this house hadn't done anything to harm me. Not yet, anyway. I immediately grabbed my phone from the tripod and started reviewing the footage. 2 hours of video. This was it. This was the moment that would change everything. This was the moment I would finally have proof that would convince everyone. I hit play and I watched. For the first hour, the footage was mostly uneventful. Just me on the couch, my chest rising and falling as I slept. The camera picked up every sound in the house, the creaks and groans of the old wooden structure, but nothing that seemed overtly paranormal. Then something changed. At 1 hour and 42 minutes into the video, a shadow moved across the living room. It was fast. I watched it cross from the kitchen area toward the hallway. But when I paused the frame and looked closely, I could see something in that shadow. A shape, a figure, a woman. Her face was obscured, but I could see her outline, her long hair, her shoulders. She was walking directly past me as I slept on the couch. My hands were shaking as I continued to watch. At 1 hour and 50 minutes, another figure appeared. This one was smaller, a child. The little girl was following behind the woman. They were both walking toward the basement door. I watched them approach it. I watched them open the door, even though I could see from my sleeping body that no one was physically opening it. The door just swung open on its own. The two figures descended into darkness. The door closed behind them. That was enough. That was all I could watch. I stopped the video and I sat there on my couch staring at nothing. I had done it. I had captured them on camera. I had proof. The woman and the child were real, or their spirits were real. They had walked right past me while I was sleeping. I should have left the house that day. Looking back now, I know that. Any reasonable person would have gotten in their car and driven away and never looked back. But I wasn't reasonable. I was obsessed. This was the greatest discovery of my life. This was everything I had been searching for since I was a kid. I uploaded the video to TikTok that morning. The comments exploded. Within hours, the video had tens of thousands of views. People were sharing it everywhere. Some people said it was obviously fake. Some people said I was an idiot for staying in that house. But many people believed. They saw what I saw. They were as terrified as I was. That was when everything started to escalate. That was when things went from strange to genuinely dangerous. I started experiencing more phenomena. The handprints appeared and disappeared regularly. The smell got stronger. I would hear things constantly now. Footsteps throughout the house. The sound of something being dragged. Whispers that I couldn't quite make out. At night, I would hear knocking on the walls. Knocking that would move from room to room like something was trying to get my attention. And then it started getting personal. The ghost, or whatever it was, started focusing on me. My door would be locked and I would wake up to find it wide open. I would lock it again and the same thing would happen. My window would be closed and suddenly it would be open. I would find water on the kitchen floor even though no pipes were leaking. I would wake up in the night and feel like someone was standing over me watching me sleep. I stopped going to work. My boss called me asking where I was. I made excuses. I said I was sick. I said I had family stuff to deal with. But the truth was I couldn't leave the house. I was too invested now. Every day something new happened and I filmed it all and posted it to TikTok. My follower count had exploded. I had hundreds of thousands of people watching my content now. And people from all over the world were following my investigation. A week after I captured the figures on camera, I started having visions. Not dreams. Actual waking visions. I would be standing in the kitchen and I would suddenly see the woman hanging from a rope in the basement. I would be in my bedroom and I would see the little girl's face staring at me from the darkness. The visions were getting more intense and more frequent. I became convinced that something was trying to communicate with me. The woman and the child were trying to tell me something. I decided that I needed to go to the basement. The landlord had told me not to, but I had to know. I had to understand what they wanted from me. It was a Tuesday night when I finally did it. I gathered all my courage and I walked to the basement door. I had my phone in my hand with the flashlight on. I took a deep breath and I opened the door. The smell hit me immediately. That rotten smell that I had been experiencing since the beginning, but worse now. So much worse. It was overwhelming. I had to cover my nose with my hand to keep from gagging. I started down the wooden stairs. They creaked with each step I took. The darkness seemed absolute even with the flashlight. I could only see a few feet in front of me. The beam of light just seemed to get swallowed by the darkness beyond. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, I saw it. In the corner of the basement, there was a thick rope hanging from a wooden beam. The rope had a noose tied at the end. Below the noose, there was nothing but shadows and darkness. But I could swear I could see something there. A shape, a body. I moved the flashlight around the basement, trying to get a better look at everything. There were old boxes stacked against the walls. Broken furniture. A door that I assumed led to a storage area. And in the center of the room, there was something that made my blood run cold. It was a small skeleton, the bones of a child lying on the concrete floor. This was real. This was actually real. The little girl's remains were still here. She had been here the whole time. No one had ever removed her. No one had ever given her a proper burial. She had just been left down here to decay. I stood there unable to move, unable to think. I was looking at the physical evidence of a tragedy that happened decades ago. And in that moment, something changed. The temperature in the basement dropped instantly. My breath became visible as vapor in the cold air. And I felt something, a presence, multiple presences, and they were all around me, pressing against me, suffocating me. I ran. I didn't think. I just turned and ran for the stairs. I took them two at a time and burst out of the basement door. I slammed the door shut and locked it. I was gasping for breath. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I was going to have a heart attack. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in my bedroom with all the lights on and a kitchen knife on the nightstand. I kept checking my phone, refreshing my TikTok feed, reading the comments on my videos. People were begging me to leave the house. They said I was in danger. They said the ghosts were getting more active because they were angry. They said I needed to get out immediately. But I couldn't leave. I was trapped now. I realized that even though I hadn't walked through the basement door since that night, I was still down there. Part of me was still down there with the woman and the child. And they had me. They had their hooks in me and they weren't going to let go. The days after that became a blur. I stopped posting to TikTok. I stopped answering my phone. My boss came to the house and found the door locked. He called the police, but I didn't let them in. I just sat in my bedroom and waited for what I didn't know. Just waited. The handprints on the walls became more frequent and more violent. They appeared in blood now. The smell in the house became unbearable. I wrapped towels around my face trying to block it out, but it didn't help. The smell had gotten into everything. My clothes, my hair, my skin. I could hear them talking to me now. The whispers weren't indecipherable anymore. I could almost make out words. The woman was calling me. The child was crying. They wanted me to come to the basement. They wanted me to join them. I walked to the basement door one more time. I didn't remember deciding to do it. I just found myself standing in front of the door with the handle in my hand. I opened it and I descended the stairs in darkness. I didn't use my flashlight this time. I didn't need to. I could see perfectly in the darkness. I could see the rope hanging from the beam. I could see the little girl's skeleton still lying on the concrete. And I could see the woman. She was standing in the corner watching me. Her face was pale and drawn. Her eyes were hollow and empty. She was pointing at the rope. She was telling me it was time. It was time for me to join them. It was time to stop running. It was time to end this. I walked toward the rope. That was the last thing I remember. The feeling of rope around my neck, the pressure increasing, the world going black. The next morning, my boss came back to the house with concern. I hadn't shown up to work for 2 weeks. He hadn't heard from me. He was worried something had happened. When I didn't answer the door again, he called the landlord. Together, they let themselves in. They found the house exactly as I had left it. Doors locked from the inside, windows sealed, no signs of forced entry. But there was a smell, a terrible, overwhelming smell of decay. They went down to the basement searching for the source of the odor. That's where they found me, hanging from the same rope that Catherine had used decades before. My body had been there for at least a week. My face was unrecognizable, but my identification in my wallet confirmed it was me. The police investigated my death. They found all the TikTok videos I had made. They watched the footage of the figures in the darkness. They interviewed my boss. They interviewed the landlord. In the end, they ruled it a suicide. They said I had been depressed and obsessed with the paranormal. They said I had staged the ghost encounters myself for attention. They said I had taken my own life in a moment of despair. But I know that's not what happened. I know what I saw. I know what was in that basement. And I know that Catherine and her daughter got what they wanted in the end. They got another person to share in their suffering. Another soul trapped in that dark place forever. My body has been buried. My TikTok videos have been taken down. The house has been boarded up. But sometimes at night, people who walk past it say they can see handprints on the windows. Small handprints, adult handprints, all in blood. And sometimes they say they can hear footsteps inside, running back and forth, like someone is still searching for a way out. But there is no way out. Once you go down into that basement, you never come back up. The only thing you find down there is the same thing Catherine found, the same thing her daughter found, the same thing I found: darkness, despair, and the unbearable knowledge that you will never leave this place. If you're watching this story right now and you're thinking about investigating abandoned houses or places with dark histories, please don't. Please just leave those places alone. Some doors aren't meant to be opened. Some basements aren't meant to be explored. And some ghosts aren't looking for help or revenge or closure. Sometimes they're just looking for company. They're looking for someone to pull down into the darkness with them. And once they get you there, you'll spend eternity wishing you had just stayed away.